Allan, how do you pronounce your surname?
Kleinhans is how we say it in South Africa, but for most people, gosh, I should have brought my glasses, shouldn't I?
Come on.
All right, there we go. You know what? Listen, James, go for it, brother.
What do you want to know?
Well, you were just about to tell me about yourself, Ben.
Yeah, oh, God. Well, I don't know what I call myself now. Transformation coach seems to be the way. The life coach label didn't seem to be working very much. I found that basically life coaches were popping up everywhere throughout very little experience and training. So I like the idea of, basically all I like to do is get people to be free of whatever pain is blocking them through whatever means possible. And I think you bring in a lot of your life experience, stuff you've learned, techniques you've learned, but what you use to get that. So if I had to put myself in a wee box, it would be, I'm really good at getting people to just accept what is. That's it. Not so good at the future, like goal setting and drive forward. That really doesn't inspire me. I like to see that look in their eyes where they're kind of free, and then I'll just let them go and make more mistakes and come back a wee bit later, and we'll just
lovely, man.
So that's kind of, I'm 48 now. So.
Jesus, that's Greg's phone. Hold on, they'll answer it in a second.
I'm not going to edit all this out, Allan. All right.
Keep it in, brother. Let's keep it real.
It in, man.
So, James, listen. First of all, James, thank you for introducing yourself, and also, secondly, please let me just apologize again for being late. I'm never late, and I came to see someone earlier, one of my mentors, one of my great friends. And we just went for a walk, and then we came back.
You can't use a word like never, Allan.
We've just been talking, and next minute Ben phoned, and I thought, "Oh my God, Allan!"
You can't say never and then be late.
I'm changing rooms.
Hey guys,
so I'm looking forward to having a great conversation with both of you. Ben, it's great to see you, brother. It's been so long.
Hey, it's great, bud. Allan, for the purpose of James's help, just give him a little nutshell of yourself, buddy, as well, please.
Yeah. All right, cool. Yeah. Well, obviously you can hear I'm from South Africa, and I've been living in England on and off for 31 years now. Gosh, I can't believe it. It's my 32nd year. I've lived in America, lived in Europe, lived in Austria, lived in Moscow, and basically, growing up in South Africa, there were certain experiences I had as a kid which shaped who I became. And then I found my way to personal development. I was introduced to Think and Grow Rich, read that, and that led me on a different path altogether. And, I didn't realize what was happening at the time, but it brought me to where I am now, and I realized everything's connected. And so I just, very similar to you, I love seeing people free, just free to be themselves. So when people say, what do you do? I say, I turn people into butterflies. Oh, wow. I help men and women and children become butterflies, so they can really just experience their soul's true nature, freedom, self-expression, love, kindness at the deepest level, or at the highest level, whichever way you want to measure it. And because then people can really tap into their potential naturally, right? There's no resistance then. 100%. There's when you help them to dissolve those limitations of their mental constructs, and then they really discover who they really are, this beautiful spirit that wants to express. Wow. Then people can go off and create all kinds of beautiful things, and they free themselves from their self-imposed prisons. All the ones that have been, pushed onto them when they were kids. They learn to dissolve that and learn from the trauma of that. And so I think the three of us are probably just very, very synced.
Very, very similar, yeah.
I am so grateful and feel a degree of anxious because I've called this meeting here with two great men. I would like to consider myself a great man, but I don't think you can name that yourself.
I think there's three great men, my friend. You've always told you,
And I just heard a great podcast done by somebody else in a different sector, and I thought that's such a great idea. So this isn't my idea per se, but I thought who can I invite on a call like this who would share something really valuable and really powerful at this absurdly crazy time, who are mixing it in the marketplace right now and really making things happen in people's lives and in their own lives. Because I think James nailed it. Coaches are there's a lot of coaches out there right now, and that's great for the industry. I really care about what you two have to say, and I
think it's indicative. The whole industry, isn't it? Because it's one of the fastest growing industries. So obviously, there's going to be a lot of people saying, "Hey, I want to do that too. I want to be a coach."
Yeah, 100%. And so I've invited two of the strongest men I know in this field to just be here and throw around some questions to help us just look at where are we heading? Not just as coaches, but what is the kind of advice that is helpful that we might offer to people now? And I know it's very difficult to take a generic view of a person because everybody's so distinctly different. Don't need to tell you guys that. So I don't really know what's going to come of this podcast, and that's scary and exciting at the same time, because I'm not in control, and it's something I'm trying to learn every day. I've got something to just read to almost give us a context for this time here. It's from Richard Rohr's Wild Man to Wise Man, and just a couple of paragraphs to just paint a bit of a picture, and we'll just spin off from that. And excuse my if I'm coarse and I say, hey, let's dial back to that subject and pull us back round. I apologize for that in advance, you guys. Right, I'm not ready, but I'm kind of brand new to this podcasting thing, is what I tell everyone. So interestingly enough, our word mentor comes from Greek mythology. Mentor was the wise and trusted counselor of Odysseus. When Odysseus went on his long journey, he put Mentor in charge of his son, Telemachus, as his teacher and the guardian of his soul. This illustrates that one's biological father is seldom the initiator of the son. It's always another special man who must guide the boy into manhood, from wildness to wisdom. Many bosses, ministers, coaches, and teachers tell a young man how to get out of his problems and to be normal again. And a true mentor or initiator guides a young man into his problems and through them. So I just looking at you two and hearing these words out loud, I know I've picked the right people for this podcast here, which will always feel a bit muddy and messy and shitty, but also wet and wild and wise. The mentor will lead a man to the center and to his own center, but by circuitous paths, using even his 2 steps backward to lead him 3 steps forwards. It looks wild, but it is really the wisdom path. You guys are coaches and mentors to a whole bunch. You've got your own kids, your own families. You've been doing this for a while. Just blur at me as a response to some of that, and a response to the crazy time you have personally had in the last 18 months, 2 years.
Okay, do you want me to go?
Go, bud. Go, James.
Okay. The reason a mentor is somebody outside yourself is because of all the emotional triggers that you've got and your own connections. So like your father could give you the words, but you feel like he's obliged to give you those words. So you reject him through your own rejection. Do you get where I'm coming from? So my mentor was a guy called John Lester, died a few years ago, 57 years learning, coaching. And you see when somebody tells you something, but you know it's like an energy, you feel they don't need to tell you, right? And they're going to gain nothing from telling you, but they tell you anyway. Doesn't matter where it takes you or how hard it's going to be, to them, telling you the truth is more important than protecting you. Where if you're a father, a brother, a son, whatever, your natural protectiveness is going to come in. We're all in relationships or been in relationships. How many times have you stood in your relationship going, how can she not hear me? How can she not hear what I'm trying to say and where I'm trying to come from? And it's probably because you're not even saying it with the same tone, the same natural clearness, kindness. You're saying it with all your like baggage and crap that comes along with it. So even being a mentor as such, like you grow as much for the person you're speaking to because you get that space. So like when I do a 5-day event, I transform at the end of the 5-day event, because I've spent 5 days in a space that I can't create unless I've got all of those ingredients. So when you make a cake, you need all the ingredients. I need the guilt wanting to go there without the attachment. I need the shame, the regret. I need me to be able to go there and it's not something personally attached to me. And I need to then see my own things. Like maybe I'm helping a girl in an event and I'm seeing how I'm treating a girl in my own life. You get where I'm coming from? And it isn't until you actually watch that you see it. So for me, I think becoming the mentor is really the only way you're going to learn it. It is the only way you're going to learn it is by being involved with something you're connected to but not attached to, would be the best. Because when attachment comes into it, you'll find that maybe even with clients, if they become too attached to your teachings, it starts to dissolve, it starts to not have the same power as what it did when they weren't attached to that. So that's my take on just what you said there. I don't know if that's
great. Thanks, buddy. And to you, Allan, respond to those words, then we'll come back to the last two.
Yeah, I concur with much of what James has said, for sure. Listening to you read that, man, I'm familiar with a lot of Greek mythology, etc., and a lot of the Greek and culture, etc. And it was when you talk about men, it's interesting how things work, right? Synchronicity. I mean, just as you rang, Ben, I was just talking to, even on the dog walk earlier, so we've spoken about this 3 times while we've been together in the last couple of hours. We're talking about mentorship. We're talking about initiating boys into men. And, if you look around, there's so many families where the father's missing, right? And so, these boys that have been left with their mothers or their sisters, some of them with their brothers for sure, but we're talking about specifically about guys, so many boys, from all cultures, all backgrounds, that have not been initiated from boyhood into manhood. And this is the challenge we face in the world, right? This is why we are where we are, because men are still acting emotionally immature, even in high levels of power. And so, we need more of that feminine energy, which is about nurturing, right? But you don't nurture boys, you actually initiate them from boys into men. Mm-hmm. And that's why, there's a lot of movements that have, taken place in the last, I'd say, I wouldn't say as far as a decade, but definitely in the last several years, where there's lots more men's groups coming out now, and they're inviting men to come in and to really get to grips with their own emotions and to really get to grips with some of their traumas and the stuff that they don't want to look at. So mentorship is something that we can all do for each other all the time. And we're always doing it, whether we know it or not, but we're doing it, destructively or constructively. Mm-hmm. And so, there's many boys, many men that have been mentored by somebody who wasn't their father figure, who wasn't their biological father, as you said, that's because, if you further along the road of manhood, you can definitely help a boy initiate. You can help a boy learn certain things, right, that you've learned. Mm-hmm. And if you have that desire to share and teach, especially if you've had, and it's usually people who have been through dark times in their lives, right? Who have really seen the darkness of life, and yet they've chosen or decided, I'm going to be a positive light in the world, right? I'm going to share my darkness in a way that empowers other men and women. It doesn't matter really. It's about people in general, but we're talking specifically now about men. And it's a fantastic passage that you read out. And I think, it's just beautiful the way we're free flowing here with this conversation. So I think, as you said earlier, don't worry about how it's going to turn out. I think how it's going to turn out is going to be beautiful. You know what I mean?
Do you think, Allan, can I jump in? Do you think that's a choice? I don't think
what's that?
To like the men that end up doing this type of work from their pain.
I think a lot of them, they choose it, at some point, especially the ones that are having an impact in a profound way. But most men don't choose their destiny for sure, because they're still being led by their significance, which is that's the emotionally immature, man who's actually a boy in an adult body, Yeah. And this is both genders. There's lots of girls in adult bodies too, and it's on the same side and the other side of that, they also have their own conversation about being mentored by their mothers.
Yeah.
But I think, a lot of men choose that. And, there's some of the men that we can talk about in this conversation, men who have impacted all three of us, from afar, through their books, through their teachings, through their, the mark that they left on the world.
There's a quote from T.S. Eliot here. Be still and wait without hope. It sounds bizarre, but wait for the next part. Be still and wait without hope, because for hope would be hope for the wrong thing, right? So I'm going to go ahead and hope for the thing I want, I'm not going to be hoping for the thing I need. I always want more of what I want. I don't really want what I need, but what I really, really, really want is what I need to transform me. I need life to have an impact at a level that's beyond my control, to give sufficient energy and power to create a transformation. Otherwise, I'm trying to do it on my own steam and my own energy. You know, still tired from last night, faffing around with the kids, and got a busy day, and on my own steam, I can't transform. But that doesn't stop me wanting to be in control of my own transformation, because that's where it's most comfortable. But led out and beyond and through those problems is a leading. And it certainly, for me, when I've had challenge in my life, it's like, yeah, get the books, watch the videos, listen to the tapes, but you need to be able to see some flesh ahead of you, of someone who's like not necessarily been through exactly the thing you have, but has the spiritual and emotional strength, resilience. I would say courage, but I think courage gets a bit confused in the wash. Just someone to hold that space for you and hold that light for you at a time when you just can't hold that for yourself. And just to complete my intro to the mix, in case anyone new is listening, Kerry and I chose to niche into marriage. And the absolute truth is, I don't know why. I can't really answer why, other than I know why I'm there now is because it's the playground isn't the most appropriate word, but it's an environment where I understand the components of what have broken things down, and I understand the components that need to be introduced to rebuild, and I understand or have a good relationship with time and patience and what is required to bring about a healing of one of the most common places the world over of breakdown, you know, emotional and spiritual breakdown. And I just love the work that you guys do. Transformation rings, is even written on James's wall, rings a huge bell. And you could argue we do a very similar thing in marriage, but it just seems to Kerry and I to be the where we could have the most effect and the most impact, you know, because we know Beautiful. That space well, we know the people well. There's always some kids interfering, but topics around kids can be such a distraction from the issue that people are having. You know, usually when you get on a call with a couple, one of the first things they want to talk about is the problems with the kids, and you're going, I'm sorry, but we're not going to be talking about your kids for a year, because it's got nothing to do with your kids. You know, it's to do with
that's a secondary problem.
It's a tertiary problem, right?
Let's look at the first one. Let's look at the real problem.
Let's look at you, right? So just reflecting on an Eckhart Tolle quote here is that there's only one real evil on the planet. This is, and you don't have to accept this as a listener. I imagine this quote resonates with you guys as well. There's only one real evil on the planet, and that is the evil of unconsciousness. And people being directed 100%. And guided by their conditioning, not by their choice. And you ask anyone the world over, do you believe in and do you have access to free will? Mostly everyone says yes on both counts. But for me, I'm almost passionate about, I've almost got a detector or a sensitivity to someone's unconsciousness. I'm not so tuned into my own unconsciousness. I'm the last person I see clearly. But I love that's the real genuine evil, because someone believes that they are acting consciously and making a conscious choice, but is their family conditioning, their family training that is actually directing the choice. And all three of us set about a process, if you like, or a coming about of creating the right environment for people to start to unpick that unconsciousness. So hopefully, in a nutshell, that's putting me into the picture with you two guys here. So just want to get over not over the pandemic like that sense, but for our conversation here, just pick out, you guys, what have been the noteworthy things for you personally? What has been your own personal struggle for the last 2 years? James, do you want to kick us off again, bud?
I need to do 1 second. If you start, somebody's at the door, but I'll hunt them.
Of course, bud. Allan,
well,
you start, bud?
Cool. Yeah. So, well, you know, listen, I mean, that was in your first question, wasn't it? And I'm glad you came back to that, because I remember that both of us haven't really answered that. You know that actually I was in California in March, right, of 2020, when the announcement was that California was closing down, and we all said, wow, you know, and then suddenly for the first time ever, Tony had to call off UPW. And so I flew back to London early, and on the way back on the plane, I remember just thinking about what was going on, thinking, wow, California's closed down. What does that mean for me? What does that mean for the UK? What does it mean for Europe? What does it mean for the world, right? California, gosh. And on the plane, there was an incident on the plane where somebody was ill at the back of the plane, and people freaked out, and they came down towards further down the cabin, following a stewardess, and kind of like panicked, you know, and I just put the blanket back over my head and went back to sleep. I thought, well, you know, as soon as I got back, the first post that I did, for 7 days, I didn't do anything online. I just watched and I saw what was unfolding, right? Those first 7 days. Remember that, right? And, you know, March, April 2020. And I was thinking, wow. And then I put a post on and I just said, listen, we have nothing to fear but fear itself. And then what I did was I said, how can I serve? You know, people are going to need serving. What can I do? So immediately what I did was I got invited to an online summit, and I was asked if I want to sell anything. I said, no, I'm going to open a free Facebook group privately, and people can come and meditate with me every day. And that's what I did, right, through the first part of lockdown in 2020. Just meditated every day at 11 a.m. And I had thousands of people watching the replays, etc. It was awesome. That's what I did. And that was my first year. And then also I did all my workshops that were booked. I had workshops booked, Ben, in Bucharest and in Russia. And, and also here in the UK, I just put them online. I did 4 days into 2, and I just did some speaking workshops and my Awaken. We had an amazing year, man. I reached people internationally that would never have appeared in person in my workshops, right? Mm-hmm. And then the next year, which was last year, 21, I had an amazing year just educating myself on blockchain and crypto and coaching still, but I didn't do any workshops in 21. I just coached and I just studied, blockchain, crypto. So I've had an amazing 2 years, and now I've started this year in a beautiful way. I'm excited about this year for all of us. I mean, this is an epic year to be alive. It's an epic time to be alive. 2022, man. I just turned 55 in December. I'm feeling strong, feeling healthy. I've been working out every day, 6 days a week, eating well. Kids are doing great, man. Life is beautiful, and I think, coming back to coaching, coming back to mentorship, true mentorship, as I was saying this to Greg earlier when we were walking, we're talking about the same thing, how we can have an impact in 2022. Because once you got your finances down, really, then what you want to do is you want to spread your gift, right? That's what money gives you the choice to do, to spread who you really are, your gift, because you have no resistance or limitations. And we're talking about the same thing. So I think that's the same for all of us. What can we do in this year that we can have a true impact, on the world, just as we show up with people individually and collectively, and you don't even have to open your mouth. As I said to Greg earlier, you don't even have to open your mouth talking about energy. You can just have an impact on people.
You absolutely.
So hopefully that answers your question.
Yes. One example of something that was hard for you to let go of, what brought up some fear or uncertainty for you in the last 18 months, 2 years, Allan? Yeah,
I had a very dark period. I'd say it was the end of 2020. I had the worst Christmas, and I've said this a few times to a few different people that I've spoken to. Worst Christmas, worst birthday, worst New Year. My birthday falls the day after Christmas. So that period of a week, in fact, the whole month in January and right through until April, it was a really tough time for me. And because I was in a relationship that wasn't really working, right? And it was affecting everything. It was affecting how I show up because, your relationship, Ben, this is your area of specialty, right? If your relationship's not working, right, nothing else is working, man. You know what I mean?
The train comes to a stop, buddy. Nothing moves. Nothing moves.
Exactly, man. And it was a tough time, man. In April, I made a decision. And you know what I was afraid of? To answer your question specifically, man, I had uncertainty, you know what I mean? If your relationship's not working, you have uncertainty. Doesn't matter what you call it. It's fear. Like you have a fear of gosh, things are not working. Like, what happens if it doesn't work? What happens if I can't get it right? What happens if what's going to happen, right? So yeah, that was a tough time for me, for sure. So, and obviously I had to employ all the tools that I've studied, and all the tools that I share, on myself, consistently.
Yeah, beautiful. Thanks, bud.
And I made a decision to end that relationship with April, and then it's been an interesting ride since then.
Same question to you, James, bud.
I found it all hard. It's still hard. It's not at the other end yet.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm going through a dark night of the freaking soul, man. I'm like, it's been.
Well, you know what's coming next, then?
Yeah, I think all that's been happening over the last 2 years is I've been looking at the ingredients of the pain and trying to create a way through it. And honestly, I've not been on holiday in 2 years. I've not enjoyed any of it. I've enjoyed bits of it, But for me, it's been a journey really, really deep within. So it's like I say it's all been hard. And watching people suffer, like when you know it's they're taking in all of this outside conditioning and like they're giving up their power.
Yeah.
Like I spoke about it in a live. Like one of the best things about being human is giving yourself permission. And then people are asking for permission to live their life. That's going to that's like a cancer that will, like, as people like yourself, Alan, have got so much resourcefulness round about you. But where I look, I've seen all the people just giving it all away. And it's been quite tough to watch. Even holding on to it yourself in such an environment's been, well, I've seen it all tough.
Actually, you know what? I have to just commend you for what you just said there, man, because you actually reminded me there was times, Ben and James, you know, when I was really frustrated the fact that we weren't allowed to connect and be free, because, you know, as for men, right? Listen, one of our most innate desires for men is freedom. You know what I mean? I mean, men have been trying to cage each other since the beginning of time, and look what it gets us, right? We just at war all the time. So yeah, there were times when I had to really give myself a talking to, you know what I mean? Just say, listen, you know, and manage your focus, because you don't want to get caught up. It's I agree with you. It's frustrating to see people just relinquish their freedoms, you know, and like you just say, come on.
For me, it's been chipped away at through social media, through the media, through TV.
Yeah.
Like, you know, men will fight more for their football team than they will their liberties and their kids. And like, that's the unfortunate truth in Scotland.
So conditioned, eh?
You have a poor football manager and they'll protest the streets to get rid of him. You have like decisions that could impact your health. And I was at the end of trying to share these truths about abuse, neglect, what was happening in our natural health, and personally getting attacked for trying to like do the right thing. Yet the people who were laying the laws down were getting left to just be.
Yeah.
So that was a Scottish thing. I think Ben's probably where you are. It's been pretty similar.
Well, we had a great trip up in Scotland this year, James. As you know, we sold our house and banked the cash and just jumped in a caravan, went on tour around the north. Never been to Scotland before. What a huge mistake that was, never going to Scotland before. And hilariously, Kerry and I just wanted to cut loose and just jump into a country or a state that we were more free with our liberty and freedom, genuine freedom to choose. And when we got there, we found it was very, very rigid around the rules, and we had cut our nose off to spite our face. But I had a really important experience, because I'd had my own perspective on how to get through and how things were unfolding, blah, 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 like everybody does. And we were on a campsite with a lovely couple. They were very welcoming, great hosts. And they had heard that somebody from the previous campsite had COVID. So they wanted us to test immediately. And because their livelihood hung on the balance of a potential infection or someone being infected, and there was no bailout for them, it transformed my relationship with the whole picture. I'm now thinking, like, my choice directly affects your livelihood, and I still have a choice, right? I can just leave the campsite right now. You know, that's my prerogative and my choice. Yeah. I just felt like, because I can see you in your eyes, and I can see who you are, and I can see what a big deal this is to you, and you still technically don't really want me to do it, but your hands are tied. It completely transformed how I felt about making that choice to test for them. Up to that point, there was just no way I was ever even going to test. But now I saw the impact of my choice on somebody else. It just had a different meaning. I still felt like I was making a choice, and because I was making a choice, it was one I was willing to make for them. It was a really helpful moment. I mean, that might be the only example of that. My reaction to it, you know, just really enjoying you guys talking it through, has been one of, you know, I've been sad, and giving myself permission to be sad. I would like to argue I probably give myself more permission than most to be sad, as part of the way I show up on the Enneagram. a good night for me and Kerry, not for Kerry, but for me, is to turn all the lights off and just cry about a sad movie, right? I'm that kind of crazy ass emotional, but that's Kerry's worst. It's Kerry's worst nightmare.
I love that about you, brother.
I've never made her do that.
I love a good cry too, man.
It's on the cards, bro. Tell me about it. So yeah, just like, and what is it specifically I feel sad about?
I'm just gonna close the door.
Yeah, sure, bud. I feel sad that words, not words like that, how it's come to this. Sad how the venom in the way we treat each other has become the subject. The subject isn't coronavirus. The subject isn't even really vaccination. The subject has gone way primitive. Like, how the F can you do this to me? How dare you do this to me? It's become another vehicle to hate my brother and sister all over again in a new mask, a new concept. Like, we've learned nothing. And for me, that's something that I haven't been able to hold. So I've held on to the literature and words of strong men that have come before me and probably made excuses to, postpone any kind of grief that I've been carrying through. The word grief, and particularly in the subject of men, is a word that men are, generally speaking, I'm making a gross generalization here, are not comfortable with. The word grief is very close to, in most men's minds and feelings, that of weakness, because in a state of grief, I'm out of control. Like, I can't dictate how long I'm in this process for, and when I come out the other side, like, to enter into grief and be willing to have that held and to process that is terrifying. And it still terrifies me now. And I've been through grieving processes and rituals and done my own grief work till the cows come home. But even now, it's still a
collective grief.
It's part of James.
The collective grief.
Collective grief.
So you've went through your own grief, but this is collective. Can I ask, what stage do you feel in the process we're at right now? And I'll see if we're kind of thinking.
I have an answer to that question.
I like what you said, Ben, while you're looking for the book. It reminded me of what you said very early on in the conversation. I think when you very first thing you said, you spoke about being unconscious. And, it just reminded me of what Carl Jung said, until we make what's in the unconscious conscious, we're going to keep bumping into the same thing and calling it fate, And, if you look at what's happening right now, you talk about, I love what you said about the topic has become, well, it's really just about each other now, and people against people, And there's so many different causes being fought for now, in just in different ways. But it comes back to significance, doesn't it? And it's because we're all acting from, unhealed wounds, unconscious, unhealed wounds, you know what I mean? So until we go inside and do the healing work, and it's messy. That's why people don't like doing it. It's messy work, right? And it takes a while. You have to go to places you haven't been probably never sometimes in your life. You can't remember those things. They're suppressed. So I love what you said, man.
Alan, that's been my point. Like, I want to bring awareness to people will get sick when all their suppression is coming up, and a lockdown will bring up suppression.
Of course.
So, like, you can't pin everything on a virus. The virus could be the trigger.
Nah.
But this is for me, this is a moment where humanity needs to look at its lifestyles, its choices, its how it looks at trauma, its root causes. And sometimes, like in all things, you need to get through mass illnesses and through all the pharmaceutical stuff at it to realize that's not going to fix it. And I genuinely believe we're at a stage where, like, I'm 48, you're 55, you said. You're what age, Ben?
39.
39, you're like the young one.
It's actually a good mix of ages.
What I'm saying is we're all looking at natural, healthy ways to become healthy human beings, right? Kind human beings. And I know for a fact when I'm going through like a breakup, I went through one like yourself there, Alan. I'm not feeling healthy. I'm ill. I'm feeling all these things. None of that is caused by any virus or external thing. It's caused by an internal suppression that's coming up to the surface. So we can't ignore that like, you know, when somebody gets through something worse than somebody else, how much of that is to do with their own stuff that's coming up to the surface 100%. Through where we are in this process. And I do believe it's a process. I believe we're at a bit of the process where I'm getting excited, not because it's the nice part of the process, but because I feel it's shifting to another side. And I mentioned the grief process. I feel we're at the bargaining stage, and I feel people are starting to go, am I willing to bargain my freedom for the next few years? Am I willing to bargain my health? Am I willing to bargain this relationship? And this is where the real coaching gets done. Because after the bargaining comes the realization of what you've allowed, what you've done to yourself, what you've done to others. Heart comes after bargaining. But until you weigh up for yourself, you're stuck in the anger, the shock, the denial. And that's what I've seen for 2 years, denial and anger and shock, like, 3 weeks to flatten the curve. No, we're a year and a half in now. You can't stay in shock. This is happening. And the only way we're going to get out of this, in my belief, is a consciousness shift towards healing rather than suppression.
100%, man. Yeah. Can I just jump in there quick, Ben?
Sure, but
I want to ask you about something. I just remembered. Are you recording this where all three of us in the gallery view?
We're all in, bud. Yeah, all three.
Yeah, perfect. Because I did a group chat like this a little while back, and there was 5 of us, and the person forgot to actually record it in gallery view. So you only see one person at a time. So I just wanted to say James, I love what you said there, bro. You know, the very first, you know, when you go back again to March 2020, Ben, you know Dan Gregory, right?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So yeah, and I think you know Dan from when we all crewed together, didn't we?
Yeah, same team. Yeah. That's
right. We're all fire team together. Oh my God, that just came back, that memory, man. That was so awesome, man. That's when we met Dan, actually. And I hadn't seen you for a long time. I remember that. But you know, going back to March 2020, Dan Gregory decided. This is a friend of ours, James, really nice guy. You must connect with him, actually. Follow him online. We'll connect you with him. And he decided that he was going to do 30 days of talks, right? Streamed live every day for 30 days. And I was the first one he did, right? And we turned into a 3-hour conversation. I said exactly the same thing as you, James. I said to him, listen, this offers all of us an opportunity. We're going into this all of us as a human race are going into this like as a first timer, right? We all together as first timers in this experience. And nobody's got education here. Nobody's got any wisdom more than anyone else having ever lived this kind of thing before. And this represents an opportunity for us individually and collectively to have a transformation, a divine transformation, you know, to collectively raise our consciousness and individually. And, so yeah, it's a beautiful thing that you said there. And that's, you know, again, it comes down to choice, right? People are going to look at it and say, wow, you know, this is the worst thing that could ever happen. Or gosh, you know what? Here's an opportunity. What can I do, right? How can I use this to profit in the process emotionally, spiritually, psychologically, mentally, physically, financially, and then help other people to profit in the process too. Yeah.
But that choice that you said there, Alan, is beautiful, but that's the bargaining stage. People are maybe starting to realize they have a choice, but for a long time they didn't think they had.
No,
and
well, most people, James, most people are sleeping.
But any habit any environment is like, you know, I like to think myself as hold my energy, quite grounded. But if I went to a hall that was full of 100 people that were violent, nasty, argumentative, after a while, that environment would start to really impact my energy, my emotions, my thoughts. And there's a lot of good people out there that, because of an environment, haven't realized they've got this choice. Mm-hmm. And it's not because if you put that same person in a Tony Robbins environment, they would blossom and transform and take over the world. But you put them in an environment of judgment, guilt, blame, shame. You said, I said. After a while, they're going to start to. That doesn't matter how strong they are, because that's what I felt. I felt my behaviors changing, and I was like, that's not me.
Environment is stronger than will, James.
Yeah, that environment, and collectively the environment. When I watched my dad, who would go to the gym 6 days a week, to COVID, he doesn't go at all now, and he just sits and watches the TV. And I love him with all my heart, and I try and tell him, not to look at this and try and, but he's there. I'm not there every day. He's there every day, like hanging on to these words. And it's took an environment like that to stop a man who trained for 45 years in his life. Wow. Now he doesn't go back near a gym.
Just shows you how powerful the television is there.
And that's like obviously my father, and with my knowledge, my tools, I can't change that behavior. I'm chipping away at it, but it's still, it's getting lighter and lighter as it goes on. So I can feel his choice system coming back. So that's what I've witnessed. I don't know how you feel about that.
Ben, can I ask you a question about what James has just said now? Ben, what do you think about that? Is that linked back again, to mentorship or a lack of mentorship in young boys' lives, and what we spoke about earlier in your initial question, the fact that, so many people are just led by the TV because they're lacking certainty. So they're thinking, just give me some certainty, right? What do you think?
I think everyone is doing 100% best they can with what they know, without doubt. And if people could see more, I know for a fact they would do more. And there's something about the Father's voice. We have this conflict of an extreme sense or yearning of father hunger for a father's guidance, love, touch, strength, and at the same time we can't hear his damn voice because it pisses us off something wicked, right? So
yeah,
you back to the words earlier on, you seek, and I know you two are seekers as well in this case. You're seeking the word that you can hear. You're seeking the voice that you can hear because the ones you damn well can't. And to a point, it's helpful to wrestle with that and see if you can't help that and turn that into a form that you can hear. But ultimately, really, there are other voices that you can hear that your ear is maybe already attuned to. And I think that's the work is, what can I hear? Who can I hear? And taking the ownership of that and the responsibility for that, really. And coming back, hopefully that was part of an answer. Coming back to the stages of grief, James, as you asked, what stage you're in. I've just opened a beautiful book from Brene Brown. She's one of my favorite teachers. And the second stage of grief, she refers to from her research as longing. And she describes that as related to loss is longing. And this describes where I am right now. Personally, longing is not conscious wanting. It's an involuntary yearning for wholeness, for understanding, for meaning, for the opportunity to regain or even simply touch what we've lost. Mm-hmm. That being a person, a thing, a normality, longing is a vital and important part of grief, yet many of us feel we need to keep our longings to ourselves. Just love that. Want to keep it to ourselves for fear will be misunderstood, perceived as an engaging or in magical or unrealistic thinking or lacking in fortitude and resilience, aka it's weak. These are not words that men say to each other in the damn pub.
No,
mate, I'd love to say something about this.
But Ben, they're not words that men say in the pub, right? But like, I was doing an ayahuasca journey, right? I do like to dabble.
I keep interfering with your ayahuasca.
I know you keep
interrupting them. Right?
So I do, right? And while I was deep in this ayahuasca journey, I seen that the feminine love was unconditional and infinite, and it was only the masculine ability to trust that it was there. And I also seen that even as a child, that connection, that longing, that missing never leaves you, no matter where you go in your life. So when you can chip through the layers of a human being, the absolute truth will be there anyway. So there is what's subjectively going on in the world, but it doesn't matter how compressed that subjectiveness is. Every human being holds the absolute truth. Now it's to try and design something that can go through those layers and get to that absolute truth. 100%. Because that absolute truth is that angry man that's shouting at his partner is just longing to feel like loved or trusted or like seen as a human being, but then they've got all of these conditions that they don't even know how to communicate logically through language, but they feel the language already. So it's trying to work through the language to get to the real, the one language. And that's where my hope goes, that as humanity, we remember who we are. Like we remember that there's so much within us that we've just through time given it away. It's like, a kid's got an iPad at 2 now, like we're just giving it's all given it away. And that kid can get, but that kid will grow up, be 40, a girl, never have a good relationship because it's still longing for that connection of the masculine energy that it doesn't trust. And it's these subtle wee ingredients that I'm like that's when you can chat to somebody in the pub and you can chip away at them, and then you say something and it goes right, and they can't hide it. And I'm like, oh no. It's like, and I've done it to somebody before, and I was like, why are you so angry? You don't need to be angry with me. It's okay. It's okay. And it just, you've obviously, you have both done that experience when you see a breakthrough. But I think that's when I've got a 5-day event coming on Monday. That's why my mind's here like this. I don't worry about the story, because I know the absolute truth is this person unconditionally loves himself, and they're just like yearning to get back to that place of I'm all right as I am. But how do you work through their subjective programming to give them a gap? Because that's all they sometimes need, like just a gap to feel it again, and then they can start like growing it from there. But like an absolute truth, that when absolute truth is truth, it doesn't need explained, it doesn't need justified, it's just truth. So I think we've got a massive opportunity now to try and awaken that type of, absolute truth.
Two questions. Thank you, James.
Ben, can I say something about longing?
Yeah, go, bud. You can say whatever you like here. Yeah.
Thanks, buddy. Before you ask your next question, or before you go to the next direction, I love that you brought that up, man, because it's so powerful. I've got my own philosophy about longing, and you talked about loss, right? Longing and loss in the same sentence, and loss is what causes suffering for most human beings. When you feel like you've lost something in the past, or you might lose something in the present, or you're going to lose something in the future, or you feel like you'll never have something as a result of something that's happened in the past, or that maybe because there's something you're missing, so you'll never have something. It's unavailable to me. But that feeling of loss, for sure, it can be very painful, and people carry that feeling of loss throughout their whole lives, and they end up suffering as a choice, really, without even realizing they're choosing to suffer. But longing, for me, the initial first longing that you have is when you're separated from source, right? And you manifest physically into this little fetus, and then you're born into the world, right? And then by the time you're one, you've got this fictional identity that's been handed to you, right? And there's several aspects of it, your race, your creed, your nationality, your culture, your color, your gender, whatever, your name, etc. And then you get taught to defend that fictional identity, But that initial feeling of longing, which then what you do is you project onto your parents, and you think that your initial longing or your feeling of loss stems from your relationship with your parents, because they never gave you what you feel you deserved, or you got what you feel you didn't deserve, in any way, shape, or form. But that initial longing is when you separated from source, right? And you forget who you are. You come and you now manifest from energy into form, right? And now you come here and you forget everything that you knew before you arrived about what your true nature is. And, as a human being, that's why we're here, is to really just to remember that, but remember it in the human form, in the physical experience. And, you can actually transform or transcend from that feeling of longing where you feel like there's always something missing, and you're longing for something. It could be a person or an object or whatever it is, right? And then you find all these temporary, vehicles to meet that need for longing, which don't really work. And many of them become very destructive and unhealthy. But if you can get to that place where you recognize, what? I am everything. I am source. I'm source manifested. And that's not like an intellectual understanding of it when you read some spiritual books, right? I'm talking about like really studying it and getting into deep, like every single day. Like, if I'm here manifested in human form, this energy that chose this body, this soul that chose this time in life right now, been here many times before, I'm willing to bet, all of us. What's my spiritual curriculum? And then when you really get into that, you arrive at a place where actually, there is no longing. Because there's nothing to long for. Nothing's ever missing. Nobody's ever missing. Nothing's ever missing. Everything's always on the way. Nothing's ever in the way. living from a state of pronoia, the opposite of paranoia. Paranoia is there's something missing. I need security. But pronoia, the opposite of that, the other end of the spectrum is the universe is always conspiring in your favor. That's pronoia. That's the literal definition. The universe is always conspiring in your favor. And if it's so, why do you have any fear?
Just throw this, we probably got about 15 minutes, guys. So I'll throw this in to the mix here for you guys to respond to. The longing gone awry easily for men turns into, what can I control? Right. And that, for me, I have been the witness of people beside themselves because the illusion of control that they thought they had, that was just ticking over, like, you know, your car engine ticking over at 1,000 revs before you put it in gear. The illusion of the control that they thought they had has now disappeared. Now they're in control of nothing. Now shit's super hitting the fan. So now, how have you guys seen people react to that sense of loss, you know, almost a grief of losing the control I thought I had? The ultimate truth being, you're not in control of a bloody thing. Like, you have access to choice, but life's not about you, and you're not in control of everything. You're not in control of much at all, really, other than your perception of being in control. What have you guys witnessed in your industry and your clients, people you serve, as being some of the fundamental one or two challenges?
I'll answer as quickly as possible. The biggest one that I've seen is probably avoidance. Mm-hmm. So just avoid it, and then a bit of just projecting it's okay when it's not okay, like a false positive. So I've seen it between both those behaviors, because like Allan was speaking earlier, I genuinely believe everything Allan said, and I've witnessed it, right? And I've witnessed that feeling of being everything. But then you put James, the character, back into the life, it's the game, and I suddenly don't feel everything again. It's like holding on to that. So it's like, how do you break this down and feel in control without being in control? That makes sense. And like, it depends where you're living and how much freedom you've got and what's round about you. But like, when I go and get buzzed and I put an event on, I've sold 120 tickets, and then 2 days later it's cancelled, I'm not in control of that outcome. That's going to hurt me. That's going to, like, that's the human part in me. Like, that's going to catch it. So that,
like, how do you feel your powerlessness, your lack of control, without reacting to it? Because you just smell, and I get is actually a question for the listener. I'm gonna, unless you guys really want to respond to that, to hold that is such a powerful gift from this time, is the notion that there is choice beyond, I feel powerlessness, I feel powerless, I feel hopeless even, and I feel absolutely zero control. Can I feel that? Can I hold that? Can I be the space for that to occur, coining Tolly's words there, without going and reacting to it? Because as soon as anyone gets anywhere near feeling any of those things, what do I want to go and find something I can control? I'm going to go control my wife, control my kids. I'm going to go and eat some crappy food. I'm going to go jerk off to my recent click porn. Like, how to hold that and investigate, how can I become that space where I'm not just a ball of reaction, I'm making conscious choices from the core and the soul of who I really am. And the end of that sentence, I want to make sure that this is at a level that's practical and helpful for the listeners. So do either of you guys want to respond to any of that? Anything helpful?
Yeah,
for anyone?
I'd like to say something about what both of you said. I think what James said was spot on, and what you've just added there was very valuable. Coming back to what you said about control, men wanting to control things. I mean, that's why men's suicide has gone through the roof over the last 3 years, right? 2-3 years. It's nearly, well, we're in our third year now, but it's gone through the roof, because when you take away a man's ability to earn his income, which is what happened, most men people lost their jobs, right? People who had a business were able to, a lot of them were able to survive. A lot of people went out of business. But if you take the average person who can't earn an income because his employment is not available anymore, you know, his identity is tied into that. So what does he do? He looks around to himself to exert control, because it gives him a false sense of security or a false sense of significance. We come back to that same thing again, significance. You know, Tony talks about it. Abraham Maslow was initially who spoke about it, you know, and man's ability to self-actualize. You know, if he's not allowed, if he isn't given the ability to actually realize himself powerfully, then what happens is he's stuck in his place of insignificance. Now he wants to exert control. So yeah, it's what can you do, as James said, what can you do? How do you provide people the ability to do that? And I think, you know, James said something very powerfully, didn't he? He said, you know, how do you feel in control when you're not in control? How do you remain feeling like you're in control when you're not in control of what's unfolding? And it comes back to surrender. You know, I was talking about this on Clubhouse just recently, the other day, talking about don't resist. I mean, Ben, you said something just now about that, you know, that reaction. But reaction creates resistance. And the more you resist, the more it persists, as we've heard, you know, Ram Dass and Wayne Dyer say, and other people apart from other people have said that. And, you know, you can't resist. As soon as you resist, you create friction. We're designed to operate in flow, but it takes work, doesn't it? It's the daily work that people don't do. I was talking to about this to a friend of mine again the other day. He was also a coach, a really, really great coach based here in London. Fantastic guy that I met through a friend of mine on Clubhouse several months back. We've become great friends. We're hanging out in Portobello the other day having breakfast. We spoke at length about clients who don't act on what we tell them or act on what they know they should be doing or their homework. They don't do the work every single day, and then they wonder why they don't get what they want. And it's really just about surrendering.
I think for me,
the way to stay in control, and I'll hand it over to you, the way to stay in control without being in control is to surrender to what shows up and not resist it, and say to yourself, right, how can I stay peaceful right now and stay in control of my emotional state so that I can move through this in the best way possible and recognize the opportunities. You can't recognize opportunities when you're in a survival state.
I agree with that, because what you're saying there is, how can you get to that? How can you get to that bit when you're not in control? See, that's this is where the human form comes in, right? And you say, my only answer is I don't know. Because say you're a husband, you've got 3 kids, you've lost your house, your money, everything, and you don't see an opportunity, right? Everything you're trying isn't working. And then you've got this voice in the back of your head saying, well, if I'm not here, if I took my own life, then the house is paid, the money's there. This is now becoming a horrible choice. The only answer, and I've explored all of that, and I've asked myself, honestly, what would I do in that moment? And I've been at suicide where I was ready to kill myself, and then somebody phoned me. And looking back on that experience, the best I can come up with is, I don't know. Mm. And in that moment of not knowing, you maybe need a wee bit of luck or a wee bit of good fortune or a wee bit of something to just, but there's that masculine feminine thing. You're in the feminine energy, you're overthinking it. Like when I was ready to take my own life, I was accelerated because I felt in control. Mm. So I think when a person gets to that moment, it's like, make sure they don't get to that moment. I think that's...
Yeah. Thank you. I think
you said something crucial there just now, Jay. You said, I love what you said there, but there was one thing that stuck out for me when you said and I know you were speaking from both an individual perspective, if it was you going through the experience, as well as somebody who's like, you know, looking at the generalization of the group, is when you've tried everything. This is the thing. People they haven't tried everything, you know, and when we're going through a challenge like that, you know, I was suicidal for several years in the 90s, you know, and it was a really, really dark time in my life. Just before I made the massive 180-degree turn. Ben knows that story, you know, and but until you've tried everything, you've got to keep trying, man. You've got to keep showing up every day. I mean, I've been at times when I didn't even have the money to put my kids on a tube, right? And we used to jump the tube. We used to jump the barrier when other people were going through the family barrier. We'd sneak in behind, you know. I know what that feels like. Do we have to choose, you know, do I feed my kids or do I actually put some fuel in my car so I can get them home? Like, you know what I mean? It's like crazy, man. But even though I was in the darkest times of my life, at certain times, I just said, you know what? I'm going to hang around one more day. You know what I mean? I'll do it tomorrow. I even tell the joke from the stage. I say, listen, the only time procrastination has worked for me, procrastination works Anybody wants to argue that with me, I'll argue all day long, because the only time it worked for me was when I procrastinated my own suicide and I gave myself another day and another day. And eventually that day came when everything changed, right? And I said, thank you for procrastination.
That's beautiful.
Okay, guys, just thank you for your beautiful spirit and hearts here. Top one thing, if you get to say one thing to someone as guidance from you for the next, going into 2022, 23, sum that up in half a sentence.
After you, James.
You've already made it through it.
Mm.
Every single part of it, you've made it through it. You just need to change how you feel about it now. Because the fact is, you have made it through it. Maybe not the way you wanted to, or thought you could have, but the truth is, you've made it through it. Now, from this place, you can change how you feel about it, what you do next, but first, recognize that you've probably been through probably one of the hardest periods of your life and everybody else's life. So if we all recognize that, I think an energy would shift to moving forward. So that's what I'd say.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I'll, I always leave every time I have something last to say, I'll get asked the same question. I love the question. I always tell people my favorite sentence, which is everything is always on the way. Nothing is in the way. And if you think about what we've come through globally over the last 2 years, I mean, this is a trying, as James just said, one of the most trying times of our existence for most people. And, if you consider that, most people have not been in a war. Most people have not been in the First World War, the Second World War, right? If you look at a lot of the generations these days, the next generation, they haven't really had tough times. This has probably been the most toughest time of their existence, right? But if you talk about people who've been through the First or the Second World War, or been in experiences where they really had to hunker down, it's a very different experience, what we've been through. However, it's affected everybody. And so here we are, right? We've come through it. For those of us who are still here, that means you can still choose to smile. You can still choose to focus on the good, and you can still choose to bring the best of you to the fore, because the best is ahead of you. And, I would say one last thing, and then I'll give it back to you, Ben. Love more. I have this hashtag, love more. Love more. Love yourself more. Love the moment more. Love what shows up more. Love who's in front of you more. Love your problems more. Love everything. Love your creativity. Love your connection to source. Explore that if you don't have one, right? If you don't have a faith, explore that. Really ask yourself the question, who are you? Who am I? Why am I here? You know what I mean? How can I love myself more? Because if you love yourself more, you'll resist less, and things will open up magically after that. Then you can really be grateful from yourselves. Thanks, buddy. It's been great.
I love the notion of I don't know. For me, it's the most terrifying space to get in. If you can enter I don't know without dragging in with you a rucksack or a cloak that sounds like you don't know and you should know, you can't really absorb the nourishment of that space. It's I don't know, I'm out of control, and I don't need to know right now in this moment. And surrendering to that can bring untold wisdom, really.
100%.
And it's almost like you got to let go, you got to give something to be able to hear what's being spoken to you. We all want to do it from this nice, safe, controlled space, and wisdom almost never comes from your comfortable living room and your television and your favorite foods. It's not of that order. It's of a different order. And if you're not willing to go seek, then that's technically, well, at least you're not really ready anyway. So a quick fire round for you guys. James, Biden or Trump?
Trump.
Allan, Cape Town or Joburg?
Cape Town.
James, hug or kiss?
Kiss.
Allan, to jab or not to jab?
Not to jab.
Not to jab. Brothers, thank you. Just want you to just pick a place where people can go to find out more about you. Simple one thing. Where can they go to get more of you and your stuff?
Yeah, you can get me at jamesmccourt.co.uk. Yeah,
just on Facebook or Instagram. I'm having my website rebuilt, etc. I'm doing a rebrand. But yeah, on social media, Facebook or Instagram for me.
Thank you, men. Thank you, brothers. Thank you, listeners. Those details will be in the bio notes. I've had a great time. I'd love to invite you guys back and just even go a little bit deeper into your hearts and souls, because they're beautiful things. You got so much wisdom and so much knowledge and love to share. I'm really delighted with how that went. I didn't know if we were going to be white knights on a horse telling everyone what to do, but I'm delighted with how vulnerable and honest you were about your own stuff. So I'm really grateful, and Kerry and I are both so blessed to have had you here today. So peace.
James, it was lovely meeting you, my friend.
You too, mate. Well, hook up on social.
Ben,
see you guys.
Thank you, my man. It was beautiful, man. Beautiful conversation. I'd love to come back again. Thank you.
Love you,
Bye-bye.
buds. Bye-bye.